What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Dating Decoded podcast. Today, we're going to have a fun one. We're going to be diving in and answering your dating questions. And for you guys who are watching this on YouTube, amazing. You may or may not know, but I actually have been doing this podcast for several months now. I get over 40 episodes, and you can check it out. You can go to your favorite podcast platform, just search Dating Decoded. I've also dropped a link to the podcast page over on Spotify if you want to go check out the rest of the episodes. And for you guys who are listening on audio, you can go ahead and check out the video version of YouTube. I'm not uploading every single one of these to YouTube quite yet, but that will probably happen in the future, so stay tuned there. And today I am going to be answering your guys' dating questions. So let's hop right into it here, and let's get into number one. And that's going to be, how do I make high quality friends? I just moved to a new city. So this is actually a really common thing I see for adult men. They move somewhere new, or maybe they're getting out of college, and even if they're back in their hometown, a lot of their friends have moved away, and they don't know how to actually create new adult male friendships. And I totally get it. It's a different world than it was 15, 20, 30 years ago. Everyone's online, and it can feel like it's a little bit of a harder time to meet people. This is a situation I've been in many times, right? I've lived in 20, 25 different countries, and I've had to reinvent myself several times. I've had to figure this out and how to make new friends. And so it's a little bit of a process. The first thing I would say that you want to do is get out there and look for different events in your city where potential friends are going to be hanging out. Like, what are guys like you doing? So when I look at it through a lens for guys like me, I'm like, okay, guys like me are going to like to play things like flag football, basketball. They might be hanging out at like a high quality, like upscale lounge, or at like a cool social event, or maybe even like an entrepreneur meetup. So when I'm in a new city, I always look for things like that. For example, I was living in Austin, Texas. One of the first things I did was sign up for a co-ed flag football league and made a bunch of friends through that. Brought in some of my current friends, had them play, and was really a great way to just expand my social network and have a lot of fun along the way, right? And when I look at it, even when I moved to Asia, I had one friend coming into it. He invited me to a lot of like cool, like entrepreneurial events, which I went to, and I would just get social at those events. And then I would invite people out to dinners. I'd invite people out to just like get-togethers after. So I'd always would take sort of the role of being the connector, of being the planner. It can be a little bit annoying at times, but the way I kind of look at it is like, if you're going to get some shit done well, you got to do it yourself a lot of times. A lot of people aren't trying to plan things. They just kind of want to follow the lead. So, I'm over here in Mexico City now, and one of the things I've actually done this 2 times now, is I created like a weekly pickup flag football game. Right. And so I would just get a couple of friends, get them to start coming out to the field. We see other guys playing, might be throwing a football around. We invite them to play with us. And over time, the group grows and grows and grows. We meet new people, post in Facebook groups, get more like expat guys coming out and playing. So you basically have these events, or you go to events, you go to these places, you start conversations, you invite people out, you take the role of being the connector. And when you do that, not only you inherently add a lot of value because you're creating fun in people's lives, you're creating activities in a place where they didn't have them before. You're the connector, and everything else becomes easier after that, right? And another thing you can do is like create nights out too. So, and this is also good if you're good with girls. If you're the guy who's like, hey, let's all go out to like X, Y, or Z venue, or I got us a table at this club. And again, you're the connector, you're the leader, everyone kind of follows your lead, and that's an easy way to kind of build up and solidify the friend group as well. And then you also, as you meet more people, you look to connect people who could add value to each other, right? So if there's somebody, let's say if Mike's a cool guy, James is a cool guy, and they do similar things in business, you could connect those guys, right? Or, if you have one friend who's going to a new location, a new city, and one guy there, you could connect them. So you're always looking to lead, to build, and to connect people, right? That's a good way to create value and a really easy way to make a lot of new friendships. Okay, on to the next question. So I'm 6'1", a lawyer, make good income, work in the city, and I cannot get a date. What's wrong? Okay, so this is actually a pretty common thing I see with a lot of guys, especially like engineers, lawyers, these kinds of guys who are maybe very logical in the way that they do the way that they do things. Especially like you take a lawyer, right? Now a lawyer might think to himself, "Oh, I'm pretty good at talking to people. I do it in my day to day. It shouldn't be hard for me to talk to women. I shouldn't need that much help." But a lot of them don't realize that being a lawyer and the conversations you're going to have as a lawyer are completely different than the conversations you're going to have when you're trying to flirt with a girl and go on a date and those kinds of things, right? So it's two completely different skill sets. Just because you're really good at one doesn't mean you're going to be good at the other. Now there are obviously is some crossover, but it's not completely intertwined, right? It's a different skill set. And this is kind of funny too, because a lot of times guys, they have this, we've talked about it, the focus on yourself king kind of mentality of, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna get the great job, I'm gonna make the good money, I'm gonna looks max, I'm gonna do all that, and then the women are just gonna come. But then they're sort of surprised or scratching their head when it doesn't work out that way. When they're making 100, 200K plus a year and they can't get a date to save their life. It's like, what's going on? Right? And a big thing I see with these kinds of guys, there's a few things, right? So first, they don't really have any kind of dating strategy. So maybe they're just counting on the woman coming into their life or meeting her through friends. And so they so infrequently are going on dates. And even if they are going on dates, it's not girls that they're specifically intentionally choosing. It's girls that like their friend introduced them to or something like that. So they're not getting a lot of volume of like the quality of girls that they want, and also just a lot of volume in general, because that strategy is not going to get you a lot of dates. And then when you're not going on a lot of dates, if you're not getting a few dates a week or at least several dates a month, then it's going to be really hard for you to build that communication skill set of meeting and flirting with women that we're talking about. You're always going to be kind of starting from square one, because there's going to be so many gaps between one date to the next. It's not a good spot to be in. So that's the first thing, right? Not really having any sort of a game plan. And then the second thing is kind of having like a little bit of an ego around getting help, right? Where it's like you talk to some of these guys and you can tell they have like some walls up. And I get it. They've become successful in their careers, or they've become successful in different professions financially. And that comes with having, a little bit of ego. It kind of comes with the territory. You've done a lot for yourself. You've accomplished a lot of things, and that's great, right? But again, just because you accomplish a lot in one area doesn't mean, that means really anything in another area. So if you have that ego, it's going to be really hard to ask for help, right? And it's sort of an ironic thing, because a lot of times these guys who've built themselves up really well, they have resources to invest in themselves. They could invest in a dating coach. They could invest in a good photographer. They could invest in these things that are going to really improve their life. But because they feel like they don't need to, or like their ego doesn't allow them to ask for help, they're kind of like stuck in this like no man's land of like very average or subpar results with everything else accomplished, and they can't really move from there. So then a lot of these guys just like pour themselves even more into their work or their physique or their business or whatever it may be, and then the cycle kind of repeats itself. They might do that for a few years, come back, put their head above water and be like, okay, well, things haven't really changed, like what's going on? Or, also happens a lot, they meet a girl that's kind of like okay, but doesn't necessarily like really light them on fire. And as far as like them being really, really excited about it, but because they don't have the skill set to meet other women, they just like nothing really happens. Like they end up settling, and it doesn't become a great situation for them. So the best thing you can do if you're in a situation like this, and if you don't have, because listen, if you don't care about the way you spend your time and you want to go approach 1,000 girls and throw things against the wall and just sort of like figure it out on your own, absolutely be my guest, go do it, right? That's what I did in my early 20s. there wasn't stuff like dating coaching available in the way that it is now. So I just kind of did that. Right. But if you're a guy in like your mid to late 20s or 30s or 40s, and you don't necessarily have hundreds or thousands of hours to pour into getting better at dating and figuring it out by yourself, then by all means, like look into like putting your ego to the side and finding a dating coach that you vibe with, whether it's, us with Beast Coaching, whether it's somebody else. I always tell guys, like, go with who you vibe with the best and who you really connect with, because that's where you're going to get the best results anyway, rather than, it doesn't really matter like what package it is or whatever it is. Right? If you're getting a good, intimate experience from a good dating coach that you respect, that's all you really need to start making progress. That, of course, combined with you taking consistent action, because there's no magic pills. So put the ego to the side, look for a coach you relate with, and get some coaching, because that can really accelerate things beyond, let's say, doing it by yourself, right? Instead of doing it by yourself and having to spend thousands of hours, maybe you can get like the same kind of result in 3 months that you would have gotten in 3 to 5 years doing it on your own, because every step of the way you're getting your mistakes pointed out, right? And so if you really want to accelerate things, that's what I would suggest looking into. Okay, let's move on to the next question here, which is, how do I avoid gaining weight in a relationship? Is it inevitable? Okay, and what I would say to this is the kind of the mindset you want to have is, if you're in a really good relationship, great, that's amazing. But you always want to be prepared for it not working out the way you expect it to. And you always want to be prepared to be single in the future if that's what's going to happen. Because there's certain things you can't predict. There's tragedies in life. There's all kinds of things where life goes a different way than you expect. And what happens, and what I've seen a lot, is you get these guys who are in their 40s, their 50s, who maybe they've been married for 10, 15, 20 years, and they haven't been taking care of themselves. And all of a sudden they're single at 50 and they're about, 100 pounds overweight. They haven't worked out in years. They're eating healthy. Their habits are terrible. And it's like they are in no way prepared to be a successful single guy. And that is not a situation you want to put yourself in. So that's the first sort of like mindset mentality I want you to have and understand. And the second thing is to be able to show up in the relationship and, keep your woman attracted to you. You have to continue to be the best version of yourself. That's what attracted her in the first place. If you start slacking off in business, your health, your fitness, socially, then like what is going to be left for her to be attracted to? You know what I mean? So like you need to treat it like you need to attract her every single day, even if it feels like she's squarely kind of like in there, invested in you and nothing's going to happen. Like keep winning her every day. And how do you do that? Well, you go to the gym consistently. You keep up steadily with the sport. I talked about earlier playing flag football. I also play basketball every week. It's good to have 1 or 2 like cardio things you do every week. Now, if you're a little bit older in your 40s, 50s, 60s, granted, if we have there's like one guy who comes out in Mexico City and he plays football. He's like 62. This guy gets after it. He's fast too. So you never know. Like, it depends on your body type and your physical ability. But it's good to have some sort of cardio. If you're a little older, maybe it's more like tennis or paddle or pickleball. But some sort of like physical cardio thing that you're doing that also helps you to maintain a bit of a competitive drive, mixed in with obviously going to the gym, working out, and eating healthy. So that's really, really key. And then also maintaining your male friendships along the way. There's a lot of guys who just like give up all of their friendships and just get fully locked in with a girl and that's it. You don't want to be that guy either. Like you want to stay social. Being able to maintain male friendships is going to help you to, be socially sharp, which is going to help you to continuously attract your women. But also, again, be prepared if not everything goes right. So you want to, and that it all kind of comes back to like maintaining your edge, right? And it's hard to maintain your edge and your masculine frame if you're this like 50 pounds overweight slop of a guy. Like that's just not going to work. And then that also sets a really bad precedent for your woman, because now if you're just gaining weight and not taking care of yourself, well, listen, bro, she's going to follow your lead. So she's going to stop taking care of herself too. And she's going to start looking like a slob. And then you guys become that couple who is just like perpetually overweight, dealing with health issues. If you have kids, you start making a bad example for your kids. It's a deep rabbit hole that you just don't want to go down. And the best way to avoid that is to, take good care of yourself. And these things should be all the motivation you really need, right? So keep that in mind, stay sharp, and keep going out there and keep getting after it. Now, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode, this Q&A here. I am going to do a few more of these Q&As. I probably do a few of these a month. So if you like this, you guys are listening on YouTube, go ahead and check out the rest of the podcast. And I'd love to have you on there. I do a lot of Q&As over my IG story as well. And then I'll just come here and answer the questions. I might not always be able to answer all the questions on my stories. So I'll do more of like a deeper dive, more nuanced responses here on the podcast. So definitely check that out. Drop me a DM on Instagram if you have specific questions that you want me to answer. Love communicating with you guys. And all that being said, I will talk to you soon.